Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We bring you stories of faith, love, and devotion. Yeah, just kidding, please help us grow by hitting that like button. Now on to the story. Postnup agreements. I'm in the process of going through a divorce after I was unable to get past an affair she had in early 2021. Following the affair, I asked her to sign a postnup segregating my retirement assets and eliminating all spousal support in the event we divorce. She agreed and signed the postnup in the presence of her lawyer and a notary. We gave reconciliation a good go and she actually was very remorseful and committed to healing the marriage, but for reasons I won't go into here, I decided to move forward with divorce. She is devastated to say the least. I'm trying to expedite the divorce and move on with my life with the goal of staying on good terms with her as we share 2 young children. But she is dragging it out and has recently made rumblings about the validity of the postnup. We live in California. I have spoken with my lawyer and he said it depends on facts and circumstances and each case is different, but there are examples where postnups get overturned. Does anyone have any experience with this, including some of the factors that cause them to get overturned? I have no desire to see her hard done by and am committed to a fair and reasonable split of the non-postnup assets and joint custody of our kids. Thanks. The journey of the betrayed. Reflections. I wanted to share a post because my therapist, who has been a godsend, suggested journaling and sharing my thoughts might help me as I move through the next phase of my life. I had posted my backstory previously but deleted my account in a momentary fit of anger and forced my WW to delete her account too. But the long and short of it is, I was a happily married man in his early 40s with a great life, beautiful wife, 2 young kids, great career, lots of friends. I had it all, or so I thought. I discovered my wife being secretive over her phone and staying later at work in early 2021. This eventually roused suspicion and I opened her phone one night after she went to sleep after drinks with friends. What I found revealed a 2-month affair with a young co-worker that involved her in a dom-him in a sub-dynamic. I spent the night reading and recording over 2 months of messages between them that revealed the woman I had been married to for nearly a decade was not the person I thought she was. I confronted her the next day and we spent the next 18 months attempting to reconcile. In all honesty, my approach in that first year was to box everything in and cry in silence with broken patches of rage towards her. I read the messages daily for about 4 months. Why did I do this? It's a fair question. My honest answer looking back is 20% pain shopping and 80% to try and get my head around who I married and chose to mother my children. I was unable to be physical with her for over a year. The thought of it disgusted me. What she did with him disgusted me. In fairness to my wife, she never lied once, confronted and dove headfirst into trying to heal us. She went to counseling twice a week, read every book imaginable, listened to podcast after podcast and put up with my anger, silent treatment and lack of physical touch. She never once wavered. Never once gave up or showed any semblance of frustration of wanting to speed up my recovery. Looking back, I take my hat off to her resolve during that period. She was remorseful to say the least. And she showed it through action and words. This summer, I tried to make changes myself in order to try and meet her halfway and show her I appreciated her effort. I forced myself to have sex with her for the first time in 15 months. It was torture. My wife is stunning. Simply gorgeous. Half Asian and half Italian with gorgeous dark hair, olive skin and nice curves. I've always had nothing but eyes for her and considered myself the luckiest man alive that she was mine and I was hers. But being intimate with her after knowing the details of her sordid affair with a man in his late 20s was a pain no amount of love and beauty could overcome. It was simply too much. But I kept trying. In September, 2 things changed for me. First, I lost my brother in a tragic accident. It was a devastating blow. Second, I decided to go into counseling, perhaps triggered by the death of my brother. I was against therapy for some reason for so long. I had my reasons, which I now realize were stupid, but I found a therapist who really helped me. The focus of my therapy was not on trying to heal my hurt or help or hinder my reconciliation with my wife, but to help me understand my value as a man, husband and father. My perception of myself had been lost and my ability to understand my situation and what I needed and wanted in life had vanished. Therapy helped me gain clarity. And this clarity led me to realizing that I needed to move on from my marriage and rediscover a new happiness. Many things crippled me with fear before this. A fear over not being with my kids full time. A fear over not having my wife as my wife. A fear of having to start over on my own. A fear of the unknown. But then I realized that the real thing I feared was living a tormented life. A life where happiness is something I have to fight and battle for every day. A life where intimacy with my wife is an act where I'm always wondering if I'm enough. And even if I can convince myself I'm enough, a life knowing that she allowed another man to take what was mine. What she had promised to me and only me. Perhaps what I feared the most was being one of the people I had read so many stories of that were many years into reconciliation and were just existing. Maybe they were happy some of the time. Many of them no doubt were. But it was clear there was always a lingering presence of the betrayal that was with them. They were not living their fullest lives and were existing as what can really be called shells of themselves. I saw this in my future and it scared the shit out of me. In the end, I knew I couldn't live like that. I couldn't take the risk that would be my life, and so I decided to leave. That was about a month ago. My wife has not taken at all well to me leaving. She has been unable to work and unable to properly care for our kids. It has taken a toll on me for sure. While I decided to leave for the reasons I stated, I still love her. I don't want to see her hurt or sad. So I'm trying to support her while at the same time trying to figure out where I go from here. The truth is I don't know. The only things that are for certain are that I want happiness for myself and my family and to be free from torment. I haven't achieved these things in the month since I left. There is a part of me that is happy I was able to take the step and excited for taking on the challenge of being on my own and being a single part-time father navigating shared custody, but the reality is that I'm also sad at the realization I am now faced with. I miss my wife and what we had pre-affair. I question myself every night whether I can find it in myself to be able to move past this. Right now I can't be with her, but I see this in a way as us reconciling. Reconciling a joint bond and parents of two amazing kids. While that isn't an intimate relationship and may never ever return to that, can't that be considered reconciliation in a way? I don't know. This is why I am posting here. I know there are other forums including Surviving Infidelity, but I thought this was more appropriate for how I feel inside. That even though I have decided to move out, I do see us as being and striving to be as one after infidelity, whatever that ends up being. Anyway, there was no purpose to this post other than to get my thoughts and feelings down on paper. Worst holiday yet. Feeling down. I wanted to rant a little about the holidays. This was by far and away the worst Thanksgiving I have ever had. Thanksgiving and Christmas have always been big family affairs, sorry for the poor choice of words, for us. My parents, brother and sister and their spouses and kids, my dad's brother and his son and daughter and their kids. I was always so happy. And my wife used to love it and be in her element and the life of the party. This year, everyone was there except my wife. The whole family was grieving my brother and tiptoeing around me because the affair is now out in the open among everyone. And I felt guilty that I was taking away focus that should have been on my brother's legacy and parents. And I just missed having my wife there. In all honesty, Thanksgiving last year wasn't great either since it was my first after the affair, but I missed the holidays with her before the affair. I also hated knowing that she was sitting at home alone crying by herself mourning the same thing I am. To cap it off, the holidays will be tainted for me for a long time. Her PA started in January, but the discussions leading up to it started in December, and so I fear the entire winters are going to be a depression-filled downer for a long time. Sometimes I wonder how the hell I ended up in this position. Trauma and tragedy has filled my life. It's one major piece of heartache after the other. I know I am a good person, an active and present father, a loving and attentive husband, before the affair, generous with my time and skill set as well as my money in whatever way I can be to help others less fortunate than me. And yet, some greater power sees the need to hit me with major tragedy after major tragedy. Marriage is a contract. Reflections. The other day, I was having a debate with a user on why I was saying I am considering reconciliation but at the same time have separated and filed for divorce from my wife. Here is my take. Firstly, while I had filed for divorce and was focused on moving this forward some time back, I have not pushed this on my side in recent weeks. So consider me separated. What is marriage? Marriage is, at its core, an emotional and legal contract between two people. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the feelings two people have for each other. In other words, whether a couple has been BF/GF for 15 years or been BF/GF for 5 years and married for 10 years conveys the same overall connection and level of love to me. The only difference is when you choose to get married, you enter into an emotional contract to support each other through better or worse, sickness and health, richness and poorness, forsaking all others until death. There are also legal implications of marriage, of course, but it is the emotional terms that are more important for this discussion. When there is infidelity, that emotional contract becomes null and void, just like any other contract where a key term is breached. That breach being forsaking all others. In pretty much every other setting, whenever the covenants of a contract are breached, the contract is null and void. This is never controversial. But it also doesn't mean the two parties can't renegotiate a new contract. So when I had this debate with this user, it got me thinking, why is there this natural default or tendency to keep all other terms of the emotional marriage contract intact despite the contract clearly being null and void due to a breach of a primary term? Perhaps it would make reconciliation a more healthy endeavor and have a more effective overall success rate if both parties immediately agreed the contract was breached and is no longer valid. They then would have a clean slate upon which to rediscover themselves and perhaps come back together down the line. I'm not necessarily talking about this rediscovery meaning to be with someone else, although for some it may mean that, but really just to rediscover what is important to each party and then choose to re-enter a new contract with new vows if you both so decide. I mean, we all choose our respective spouses once out of the pool of billions of potential suitors, so why not give ourselves the chance to start from scratch and maybe re-choose them again? Now one might ask, what is the point of enforcing the contract being null and void if the end goal is to potentially find that same person again and reconcile for a healthy new relationship with a new contract? Well, to me the answer is simple. It is to regain your agency. Agency seems to be a buzzword thrown around a lot in these circles. But it effectively means having a sense of control over your life, decisions and consequences. And what better way to regain your agency than by honoring the breach of the emotional contract and choosing to, or not to, re-enter into a new contract? Can you really regain this agency if you remain bound by the existing contract that is tainted because of the obvious breach? Anyway, as I was having this debate, it occurred to me that this was actually one of the key factors in why I decided to leave. A contract was broken and I may, or may not, enter into a new contract in the future. I consider myself considering because I am deciding whether to enter into a new contract, but doing so from outside the bounds of an old null and void contract rather than inside it. Just feels cleaner to me. I'm sure there will be different perspectives on this, but it was something I thought worth sharing. BH's forget the hall pass fantasy. There's been a bit of chatter lately on hall passes. My views on them are simple. Firstly, they should be offered unconditionally to all BSs if said BS requests them. Secondly, BSs should think long and hard about whether this will actually help them, since I think in most cases it won't be the magic pill to feeling better that many think it will. But there's another thing I think people are forgetting, particularly when it comes to BHs versus BWs. And it is this. In a normal society, women generally control access to sex. This is not controversial. It is a fact. If a man wants to find a woman to have sex with, it generally requires some form of work or effort on his part. Maybe the exception is if a guy is super wealthy, maybe then he can get laid with less effort. Guys can't just go out and decide I want to have sex. It is a process and it requires work. Women on the other hand can get sex pretty much whenever they want it. If a woman so chooses, even someone deemed to be average or even below average looking, they can do so with little to no effort, again, if this is what they decide to do. So with this dynamic established, what do the BHs out there think in terms of how a hall pass would play out for them if their WW offered it up? You think you can just go out and have a quick fling or ONS at your choosing? It's not possible, or very unlikely. Maybe if you pretend you are single, and try and wine and dine and court someone over many dates, lying to them by not letting them in on the secret that you are actually a married man who wants to get back at his cheating wife, you can find someone to sleep with you, but then this is not really a hall pass, is it? It is actually forming a completely new relationship over many dates. And if you tell the other woman the truth, that you are married and she is nothing more than your hall pass, watch the speed at which she tells you to duck off. I guess you could go and sleep with a hooker, but is this really going to give you the closure you so desperately seek from a hall pass, having to pay for it from some poor woman who has zero interest in you other than the cash you are giving her? So guys, if you want a hall pass, keep this in mind. Easier said than done. We hope that by sharing these stories with interested folks like you, we can help people recognize the signs of a relationship in trouble, and avoid so many of these heartbreaking situations yourselves. Have a good day or night. Wherever you are,